Good morning, Timothy.
You
Good
caught me
morning
off
on.
guard.
Oh, yes. It actually happens every time, I think, every Sunday morning, right? Okay, but thank you for being with us here. And I know that you are reporting from Katsuyama this time, and I appreciate your time. And thank you for everybody who just joined us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and in Clubhouse, probably on Facebook as well. It is our pleasure to be with you this morning. Timothy is with us once again, the CEO of Langley Esquire, the company that provides government relations and also public policy services. If you want to come to Japan, if you have a product, a new product that needs to get a license here, so and other stuff as well. Also, before we go on, okay, you can laugh as much as you want, but so before we go on, I have to apologize that we need to finish at 9 o'clock this morning, sharp 9 o'clock, because I have to run to my graduation ceremony today. And for that reason, if there are any questions left unanswered, we'll answer them next week. So, Timothy, without any further ado, let's start. Thanks a lot for this.
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us every week as we talk about what's going on in Japanese politics. It has been a very active week, not so active as you might expect because the Prime Minister has been out of town. But today is November 24th. Tomorrow is payday, Monday. This is our episode 198. In two more sessions, Maya, we will have breached the 200 episode
Yes, very much
mark.
so.
200 episodes, that means every Sunday, no matter rain or shine, wherever we are, we're broadcasting, telling people what's going on in Japanese politics on a weekly rolling basis. So really appreciate you encouraging me, Maya, to do this, and also for the audience for the tremendous support. And the real beef here is the question and answer period, and that has just continued to become so rich and fruitful. So thank you for that. Maya, we've got an abbreviated session today. I'll try and zip through my talking points so that we can get into the Q&A as quickly as possible. And so, by the way, congratulations on finishing your MBA and graduating today. I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to join you there. The yen closed out the week at $154.77 to the yen. It has weakened a little bit. You might remember that last week it was 154.32, just a little bit lower. That means more valuable, a little bit higher in value. And then 2 weeks ago it was at 152. So we're seeing just a slight incremental weakening of the yen, and I think the markets are just waiting to see what's going on with Mr. Ishiba, how he's able to coalesce his government, what's going on with the ruling bloc and Mr. Tamaki's group, and we'll be talking about that. But I think the real market reaction will come later in this month when the Diet comes into session. The U.S. presidential election and the inauguration of the new president is almost 2 months, and Mr. Trump has been on fire with his political appointments. It has really taken over the news cycle. Almost every day, 2 or 3 times throughout the day, you'll hear of some of his cabinet appointments. And people understand that it will be a huge difference from what we've had with the Biden-Harris administration. And so even people in G20 in Brazil and also at APEC in Peru were talking about this, trying to make decisions without having the benefit of knowing what Donald Trump is going to be doing when he becomes president. So a lot going on there. The ruling bloc, which is the Komeito group and the LDP group, made a decision just this week to push through a stimulus package that they want to pass in the next Diet session of 21.9 trillion yen. That's a big number. That's about $14 billion that they will inject into the economy over a very brief period of time. So we can talk about that a little bit later. Excuse me. China, in a very important news, reinitiated the visa-free travel of Japanese going to China for a 30-day period. It was in a 4-year suspension, and that suspension has come down. I don't think it's because of what was going on in Brazil or the talks that were had there. It's something on a more longer term, but Brunei and Singapore had already enjoyed that status. Japan had this status before COVID, and now it's being lifted. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. And there was a huge upset last Sunday when we were talking with the Hyogo prefectural governor being reelected. He was kicked out of office. He resigned under a cloud of suspicion, a no confidence, a unanimous no confidence motion from the assembly. And rather than resign and go away, he came back for an election, and he won by a huge number, maybe 55 voter turnout, 55.6% voter turnout. That is huge. And he won maybe 45.6% of the vote, beating the contender. And I think a lot of pundits are saying that this was as a result of his skillful use of social media. And probably 70% of those younger than 30 who did vote turned out and voted for him. We've got lots of other news to talk about, but let me just turn it over to you, Maya, and we'll go through some of the other more important points and then hit the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we continue with the details, I need to say, and I want to say thank you to our first sponsor, Kanchu, Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku, and James Howell, who offer services in buying and selling real estate in Tokyo and Yokohama. And also the company does property management and investment property. If you haven't connected with James Howell yet, please do connect with him on LinkedIn. And also you can email him at james@kanachu.com. So Timothy, let's continue further.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you very much. I'm reporting from inside my old jalopy because it's a little bit chilly outside, and we only have a brief period, so I wanted to get to this quickly. Next week on the 28th is the United States celebration of Thanksgiving, and other countries do something similar to that too. The United States is on Thursday. It's always on a Thursday. This month it's on the 28th. It is also the day of the first session of the extraordinary diet session, which will run about 23 days. It will end on the 21st of December. And the Prime Minister came back from his 2 trips. As you know, he went to Lima, Peru for the APEC. That's a 2-day summit that was there. The next 2 days, he was in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil for the G20. He made a lot of news in both countries, and there was a lot of important meetings that he had. He met with Premier Xi from China on both instances. They made some progress with regard to having the number of Chinese technicians observe the treatment of water that's being released into the Pacific Ocean, and the discussions on China releasing the ban on Japanese foodstuff. So Japan and the Japanese economy has taken a huge hit because China has banned all foodstuff being imported into China. And as you know, Russia followed suit a couple of months thereafter. So the trade imbalance is pretty huge. China is Japan's #1 trading partner, as you know. So having something like foodstuffs restricted. Maya, I'm hearing some echo. Can you turn off your mic maybe?
Sure.
I think that's right. And there was also discussions on, reducing tensions. There was meetings with the new British Prime Minister, and some discussions about exchanging forces. Italy, Brazil, and Japan have the advanced jet fighter program that production will result in airplanes, these new advanced jets being distributed in 2035. So it's a major project. They had discussions about that. And he also met very productively, it seems, with President Yoon of South Korea. They talked about the dangerous escalation and involvement of North Korean troops in Ukraine. Initially, as you know, it was 10,000 troops that were being prepared. That number has now increased to potentially 100,000 North Korean troops. They need to have a replacement for troops that are being sent to the Ukraine to fight on behalf of Russia. And there is also a lot of speculation and discussion about what North Korea is getting in exchange for that, and how that implicates what dangers South Korea faces, and also Japan as well. So it could be missile technology or even nuclear technology that's being exchanged. I mean, it's a big deal for one country to support another country by sending their own troops on their behalf. So you've got to imagine that it was a deal with a lot of pretty pennies involved. We don't know the whole story there, but we can speculate somewhat accurately that this relationship between Russia and North Korea has been growing considerably, and that's a very big worry for Japan, for South Korea, for the United States, and for other like-minded countries, because this region is so volatile, and almost everything that we talk about in Japanese politics one-on-one has an implication of this military conflict. Anyway, while in Peru, the prime minister, it was actually raised last week, what the prime minister was doing, who he was talking to. Joe Biden had a 2-hour meeting with President Xi. Ishiba met with Xi himself on Friday, and then he met with President Biden. Ishiba and Biden met. It's probably the last time that the two of them will meet, because Mr. Biden will be out of office in January, and it's not clear how well Mr. Ishiba will fare. The cards don't look so very well for him. In Brazil, you might recall that there was a photo op with all of the participants on the last day, on Tuesday, and Mr. Ishiba did not make it to that event. He was late. He was actually visiting the gravesite of Roberto Fujimori, who was the president of Peru. He visited the gravesite there, and because of traffic, he made it late. So you've got to imagine that whoever's in the Japanese embassy is really got lots of egg on their face, because the prime minister didn't make the photo op, and it looked kind of bad. The prime minister actually looked a little bit tired as a result. You've got to imagine, I mean, he did fall asleep in the diet when he was being elected as prime minister almost 2 weeks ago. One can understand that, but in Brazil, he actually remained seated while shaking hands with some of the other heads of state, and that's seen as a big faux pas. And maybe his mind was someplace else, but I think it's, being in the international stage is something that you grow into over years and decades, and that's not his forte. That's not unlike Mr. Kishida, who was the longest serving foreign minister and very adept and suave and well practiced. Mr. Ishiba is more of a domestic politician, very good at that. That's how he became prime minister. But I think, especially with Mr. Trump coming in as president of the United States, there's going to be some challenges there. He did announce in Brazil, because he heard from the Trump team that he would not be able to meet with Mr. Trump for whatever reason. There was a first reason given that the schedule wouldn't allow for it, and then they found a better reason 2 days later, and that was the reason that was given to the press. But I guess from Mr. Trump's perspective, you've got a leader of a minority government who is wishing to meet with you. It's probably not so high on your agenda as you're appointing cabinet members and that sort of thing. But it's kind of too bad for Mr. Ishiba. He wasn't able to score that hit, and he came back to Japan on Wednesday. The ruling bloc agreed by Friday. So the Diet's not in session. The prime minister hasn't even been in town, and the ruling bloc and the Democratic Party for the People finally got together to agree on a stimulus package. And I already told you that it's a huge number, a little bit more than the stimulus package of last year, 21.9 trillion yen. I think the stimulus package last year was 21.8 trillion yen, so a similar number. That money will be injected into the economy once they pass the approval process in the extended extraordinary diet, which starts on Thursday. So I would have thought that it would have taken this extraordinary diet session to come to terms with that, but this is a big nickel project, and they decided it in theory or among the group of them before the diet starts. Then these three parties, the LDP, Komeito, and the Democratic Party for the People, will take it into the extraordinary diet session to have everybody else vote on it. With these three parties collected together, they have more than 51% of the votes, so they can vote that through. And that's the reason why they came together and decided it now. Once they get into the extraordinary diet session, there are a couple of things that are going to happen. One is that they hope to pass this stimulus package. Other people might have other ideas. They might have other criticisms about it, but probably in some form or another, close to what is being proposed, it will be passed, and everybody will fall in love with the Democratic Party for the People because they were able to achieve this gift, this stimulus package, maybe some months, 330,000 yen for low-income families. If you've got kids, you'll get another 20,000. Gas and electricity prices will be subsidized for the entire nation, for everybody, not just low-income people. And this package will go into the economy relatively quickly. One of the things that they had to horse trade on, excuse me for clearing my voice. One of the things they had to horse trade on was this income level below which you're not going to be taxed. It is currently at 1.03 million yen per year. Below that amount, you don't have to pay any taxes. Above that amount, until 3 million yen, you pay 5%, and then above the 3 million yen, you pay a different amount. So the Democratic Party for the People, in their manifesto, in their campaign during this last election, and they won greatly. They went from maybe 8 members of the Diet to 28 members. So their manifesto, their promises resonated, so they need to perform on that promise. So their promise to take that limitation from 1.03 million per year up was agreed to by this ruling bloc. So that point there, that will be discussed in the extraordinary diet session, but that's a bigger ticket item that needs to go into the actual budget. So that won't come up for a real fist fight until we get into December, until January, February, March, and pass the next year's budget by March 31st. So there's a lot going on there and a lot to discuss. I'm sure you might have some questions about that. I hope I can get into that. Let's see what else we've got going forward. I'm conscious of the time we've got here. Japan hosted the Five Eyes. It wasn't a summit. It wasn't the members, the leadership of the members, but for the first time, Five Eyes had a group meeting. It was hosted by Japan. The first time that a non-member has hosted it. This is pretty significant. Japan has really wanted to be included in Five Eyes. This is it's an intel group that shares national security information that they have in order to protect themselves as a collective whole. Japan has wanted to be a member of that so that they can share in that information that is generated by all 5 of these countries. And the countries are the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and Britain. But Japan, many people would say, leaks like a sleeve in terms of information, and it's a playground for spies and people who are looking for business and defense information. So in particular with regard to cybersecurity, Japan has been criticized as being a real laggard. They have a cybersecurity bill that was supposed to be discussed and passed before the end of this year. Mr. Kishida Congress and a revision of the campaign finance laws taken care of so that we can push this whole political slush funds scandal into the background. It looks like the cybersecurity bill will not be discussed and not be passed this year. In any event, they've hosted the Five Eyes, and I think that there is movement that's going there. Eventually, this cybersecurity bill needs to be passed. Japan desperately needs it. It needs the legislation to give it the ability and the funding and the resources to get to really bolster the security and the cybersecurity protections that the country needs. In any event, they had a meeting on Monday, and it was probably a precursor to something larger happening. We always see these things coming up. For example, the Canadian Coast Guard cutter visiting maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then we hear 2 weeks later that actually the Coast Guard, the Canadian Coast Guard, is going to be more embellished into not just the Japan Coast Guard, but also regional throughout the Asia Pacific, and the Coast Guard would be facilitating, anti-piracy, anti-fishing, or pilfering of the fishing lanes, that sort of thing. So it's always growing, and similarly with this Five Eyes hosting, you can anticipate that there will be more coming up. Ishin-no-Kai is one of the opposition political parties. They did not do so well. Their leader, Mr. Baba, resigned as a consequence of them not succeeding in having more members in the lower house than when they started. They actually lost about 4 or 5 seats, I think 5 seats. But for Ishin, that was a pretty big hit, especially when you have the Constitutional Democratic Party did extremely well, and of course the Democratic Party for the People grew by 250%. And for Ishin-no-Kai to not at least hold par, but actually lose seats, it was perceived to be a big damage. So Mr. Baba resigned as a consequence of that, and their election for the new party leader will be on December 1st. So we've got a week, probably Monday of next week, Monday of next week, they will have their election. There are 4 contenders for that, and it's a very big, heavy, top-hitting group of contenders. Let me tell you that the current Osaka governor, Hirofumi Yoshimura, is running and probably will win. The current deputy secretary, he's a lower house member, Runa Kanemaru, will also be a contender. An upper house member and the former governor of Kanagawa, Shigefumi Matsuzawa, will also run, and a lower house member from Hiroshima, Seiki Sadamoto, will also be a runner. 4 of them probably splitting the votes, but I think it's a foregone conclusion. If the governor of Osaka wants to have that leadership position, he's probably going to get it. It doesn't necessarily mean, as you can surmise from this, you don't need to be a member of the parliament to be the leader of the political party, and that's what we're going to see. What else do we have in news? Nothing else that's really shaking. I'm sure the government, the questions and answers will come up. Let me see. There is one other piece. While they were in Lima, Peru, the prime minister met with the British prime minister. They had an agreement of sorts that going forward, Japan and the United Kingdom will have 2+2, the economic security and the foreign minister meeting on a more regular basis, so that the Japan and the British can collaborate and cooperate more succinctly and more immediately together. More pressing, more importantly, was a decision by Australia to host Japan self-defense forces in Australia, so joint training. The United States already does that with ground self-defense forces. They've actually created a brigade level force for amphibious defense maneuvers. They've called that the Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade. Amphibious kind of suggests a marine or kind of special forces type of operation. So the Japanese have one of these brigade levels, and they're going to be training now in Australia with Australian forces. So heretofore, the self-defense forces has not been highly regarded. It's a very minor part of Japanese culture. You don't see soldiers on the streets. People don't wear their uniforms with any degree of pride. It's just something that's not seen very much. But it looks like this is going to be taking on more of an important role. And with this sort of thing happening, you can imagine that it's going to be attracting more and more young people, although the population is declining. So where are you going to get these young people? And we need the young people to facilitate the economy too. So it's a double-edged sword, but it is important that self-defense forces are training now. Interoperability will improve with not just the Australians. I'm sure this is just one of the other things, but it's been going on with the United States forces for a long time with, I guess, some degree of success. But what a tough nut to crack, having these kinds of soldiers and at the ready, especially with the declining the population. That's about it for today right now, Maya. I want to kind of wrap this up so we can get into the Q&A and you can get to your graduation.
Right. Thank you very much, Timothy. Before we continue with the questions that we already have, let me say thank you to Houze Inc., our other sponsor that works in custom home design, construction, and renovations, plus commercial building construction. If even if you worry that your Japanese is not at the high enough level, do not worry, because Hana Uroshizawa Howell will hear you out in English. You can speak in English with her and see how your needs can be met there. So thank you very much, Houze Inc. Please connect with Hannah on LinkedIn, or you can also find contact details in the description of the YouTube video. And Timothy, thank you very much for this. We have a couple of questions that came.
We've got 10 minutes for questions, Maya.
Only 10 minutes, so
Yeah.
we'll finish exactly at 9 o'clock, and all the questions that remain unanswered by that time will be answered next week on Sunday. So please forgive us for this. And the first questions that came even before the podcast started are, since some voters of the Democratic Party of the People don't want it to behave as the B team of the LDP, do you, Timothy, think that, or do you agree with Dan Harada, who said that the Democratic Party of the People is planning to join the ruling coalition?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think they will. I think if they joined the coalition, they would be worse than a B team. They would be like a C team. Even the Komeito party is declining. They weren't able to generate enough votes, but they have more numbers than the Democratic Party for the People within the coalition. Plus, they've been with the LDP much longer. I think that they see their power. Mr. Tamaki sees their power to be like a holding that swing vote. So I'll vote with you when it benefits me and my members, but I'll be in an opposition with you with my other opposition parties when it benefits them or when it diminishes you or something like that. So I think the game is still open for the Democratic Party for the People. What they're going to do in the next election, are they going to stay closer to the LDP? Are they going to facilitate them and have that opportunity to join the coalition? I kind of, who knows? But
Yeah.
the other side is that they swing with the opposition, and together with the opposition, they topple the LDP and form some sort of government. They were close this time. As you might remember, there was a lot of negotiations with Mr. Noda to kind of take Mr. Tamaki and let's coalesce all of the opposition parties. Mathematically, we could do that. It just didn't work.
Right. And to me, it looks like, can you hear me, Timothy?
Sure.
Yes, it looks like they do have more power when they stay independent, when they don't join the opposition, so that they can maneuver between the second largest party, which is the CDP, and then the LDP.
The danger here, though, Maya, is that
Yes,
the LDP and Komeito are only lacking 12 votes.
right.
So
Yeah.
if they're not going to play ball, even though you have 28 members, if you're not going to play ball with us, we'll find those votes from other independent members, and you'll be out in the cold.
Right, there is always that danger there, indeed. Thank you for this. So, the continuing a second question, or a second option, will the Democratic Party for the People continue to remain outside the government but offer support on key issues of mutual interest? I think that you already answered this.
Yeah.
Yes. So the next question, has there been a similar example in the past of a smaller party that held the cards for the survival or defeat of the prime minister and ruling coalition?
No, this is a new game. This is a new ball of wax, and so it is not to be unexpected that there will be some real growing pains. We're already seeing that now. They did agree on the stimulus package really quickly, so I think they're trying to keep the temperature down. And yes, I'll give you a concession here, and you give me a concession there. So it's all kind of nice kissy face right now, but it'll become fisticuffs very, very soon once the Diet comes into session, is my prediction.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is,
Sorry, before I end that. And
yes,
the reason why it will become a fisticuff is because the Constitutional Democratic Party has the budget committee chairmanship, and
right. Yeah.
they still want to clear the score. They want to even the table. They want to punish somebody for all of the money that was taken from by the LDP, and in particular the Seiwa-kai, and causing this huge turmoil in Japanese politics. So I think there will be a lot of questioning, a lot of time for the question, and the chairman for the budget committee will be pretty lenient as long as the LDP is getting beat up. So there's that.
Right. Okay, thank you for that insight as well. From Seiichiro Manabe-san, so do you think that the next budget will be financed through issuing more government bonds or more taxes?
Wow, that's funny. Thank you very much for being so tuned in, Manabe-san. As we know, if you're a regular listener, Japan has already been criticized and a finger wagged at them by the International Monetary Fund. Don't issue any more government bonds. You're paying for everything by issuing these bonds. The amount of debt you have is more than 2 times your GDP, what you generate every year. The debt that you have is twice that. So stop it. I know you're going to be tempted to, and I know you're in a minority government. So to keep things calm, of course, you have to give concessions, and you have to let people have their pet projects and a little bit of pork there, but don't do it. It's a rock and a hard place. This idea of going the tax level increasing from 1.03 million upwards, what they agreed upon was, yes, it'll go upwards. We don't know how much it's going to go upwards. They're going to leave that to later, but figuring out how they're going to compensate for the amount of money that's not being generated because of this is going to put the LDP ultimately in a very poor position. The economy will suffer as a consequence of that, and people will blame the LDP because you are the guys that ultimately made the decisions.
Right. Yes. Okay. Thank you for this. And Yuka, so Yuka has a very loaded question today.
Oh, gosh.
And Yuka, I don't think that we can answer all of those questions, but we can start maybe with, a general overview of it. Okay. So, Timothy, what do you think is the riskiest policy of the Trump 2.0 administration for Japan? Is this the tariffs or inflationary tax reductions? Tax cuts can lead to economic overheating and an expanding fiscal deficit, which will result in higher long-term interest rates in the US. This will lead to weaker yen and inflation in Japan. So, what do you think is the most or the riskiest policy for Japan, Trump's policy for Japan?
Yeah, I think the most obvious one is tariffs, because Donald Trump has talked about tariffs as as a tool. And also his philosophy is make America great again. So punish your trading partners who have benefited from the lenient trade policies of the United States so that manufacturing comes back to the United States. I mean, the United States is just like Japan. Japan has been hollowed out from manufacturing because it has exported that to Southeast Asian countries. The United States did something similar. You would offload the labor costs and the manufacturing and the energy costs to somebody else, and China has picked that up. And now you can get products at a lower price, but it does create a secondary problem. So I think it's probably the most obvious one is tariffs, but Japan and the United States are so close and so deeply intertwined. I think the Trump administration will give Japan something of a pass. So it's probably some other thing that maybe was mentioned in the question that is going to take prominence in terms of Japan-U.S. relations. But like you said, it's pretty complicated and a pretty deep subject.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, thank you for that. Ilka, thank you for the question. And Hiroko-san, yes, Hiroko-san, thank you for your patience. That's all for today. And as Hiroko-san wrote, it was short and sweet. I'm sorry that we couldn't go into more detail. Next week, please join us again at 8:20 here. Timothy will report maybe from Katsuyama again. So, well, to everybody who stayed with us, well, have a great Sunday and a bright new week. And
Thank you.
once
Congratulations, Maya.
thank you very much for this. Yes, I have a lot of free time now, but it's filled up with other things immediately. Okay, thanks. And once again, thank you very much to our sponsors, Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku or Kanchu. You can find them at kanachu.com, and also Houze Inc. You can find them at houze.co.jp. James and Hannah connect with them and work with them. Thanks a lot.
Click, click, click.